All right, let's get down to the road to the Undisputed Heavyweight Champion, Part 3, the WBC story of the WBC as itself. And for the next hour or so, guys, this is going to be the history of what the WBC was putting through after the Lewis and Holyfield 2 fight and before the Fury versus Usyk fight in May. And guys, for 25 years, it's been a quarter of a century for the road to come to an end. Now, guys, the WBC belt, for all you viewers out there, now the WBC, as you viewers can actually tell, as the World Boxing Council, as it's a whole, it has a different mark as what it is. Because in 1963, the belt was debuted with the WBA, when the WBA at the time was still an NBA as National Boxing Association, but of course they changed it to the World Boxing Association, WBA, a year later, or around the time when Floyd Patterson was still the champion, until Sonny Liston defeated him twice. So when you look at from all of that, it only took like 20 years after the WBC was a major belt. The IBF would be major by 83 and all those other belts. And I already reviewed the IBF and the WBO. And as of right now, the WBC has a lot of commemorative belts that were involved with so much. With the 24K gold of Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s belt, or the Emerald belt he won in May the 2nd with the obvious Manny Pacquiao, or Joe Smith Jr. in his Onyx WBC, which is pretty awesome. And then they started coming up with those other ideas with Mayweather's money belt in 2017 with that Conor McGregor stuff and Canelo and Alvarez and Fury and all that other stuff they were coming up with. There was a lot of commemorative belts that they created in their career. And of course, they already created their own division as the Bridgerweight title, but before that stuff became a factor, guys, by 1999, the history is simple. Lewis defeats Holyfield. And guys, I already reviewed the other fights with his fights in 2000. I already talked about the story of him and Nassim Rotman and the IBF scandal and such. But there's still a couple more fights I haven't reviewed yet. And to be honest, you know what? I might as well talk about this fight right now. Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis live in Memphis, Tennessee. The Pyramid. Guys, when's the last time we ever had a world heavyweight title in Tennessee? Was this the first time they ever had it here? Also, with all the promoters, main event promoters and such was the most exceptional, because mostly the CEO of Cafe Duva, of Dan Duva and the present in the 70s, were the one that were running the promotion at the time, because mostly Don King and Cedric Kushner and all those other battles with Bob Arum, they didn't know who to promote this fight. And even though Mike Tyson didn't want to have anything involved with Don King, so it is crazy of how this fight took place with a woman named Cafe Duva to be involved with this promotion fight. And I think Lewis would also be involved with the fight in 2003 with him and Vili Klitschko, which we will talk about that in another episode. I think the promoter at the time was Gary Shaw, whoever he is. He was the one that promoted the fight with Klitschko and Lewis, so interesting. So, guys, the fight goes as this. When watching the fight, so the fight starts out as this. In the first round, both fighters are studied to each other. They both throw out great combinations. Like, Tyson enters in the fight like he wants to finish it early. Excuse me. Tyson starts out the fight. He starts out really strong. They both land on punches into each other. And this has to be the moment where Tyson throws a lot of punches during the early parts of his career, because in the first 2 rounds, he's using all his energy and all his stamina to tire out through Lewis. He comes out, he wins the first round easily. And then we come to round 2, and at this moment, I think we can already tell that this was already a squash match, because Lewis gets him in round 2, He studies angles. He tires out Tyson because he used all his stamina. And when watching this fight, I go back. I'm like this almost reminds me of Daniel DeBlois and Philip Hrgovic with the headbutts and those other cheating moments. And at this moment, it is obvious because referee Eddie Cotton, not much of a person I know about, was the referee at the time. And every time Lewis, like there were times that Lewis was throwing punches that he shouldn't have hit, and Eddie Cotton gave him a warning, don't do it again. Like come round 3, Lewis dominates him again. And like Tyson is landing punches here and there, but like Lewis was jabbing his competitor really clean on shots, but there were times that he was cheating. Then we come to round 4. Lewis again was throwing. Tyson at the time is trying to move out jabs and such. And suddenly in the final seconds of round 4, Tyson angles his body down below. Lewis might have punched or something. Tyson goes down. The crowd roars. But the referee doesn't count. He deducts him 1 penalty point. Not for hitting him in the back of the head or doing this, but for pushing him down. He pushed him down because when I looked at, when the bell rang, I looked at the replay, or they showed us the replay, and I realized he did. At first, I actually thought that he hit him in the back of the head because there was a time he threw a punch that missed completely or something. I don't know, but yeah, when looking at that, like Lewis was tiring out Tyson, but at the same time, Tyson used all his energy in round 1. So you viewers can already tell Tyson at this moment, like he's not in the boxing. He's 35 years old, taking on his 36-year-old British. These two guys are past their prime. Well, they're not past their prime, but when you're in your mid-30s, it's impossible to win a heavyweight title when you're in your mid-30s. It's really hard. When you're 35 years old in a heavyweight, people say it's really hard to win a heavyweight title at that age. If you're like 25 years old to 35 years old at that level, you're in your prime. But when you're in your mid-30s, you still have a tiny bit left. So, but when you look at Tyson and everything else in his career at this moment, yeah, this is the moment when the 2000s came to him that he just didn't care about the training aspect. He just didn't care. Like, we come to round 5, and he's used up his energy. Lewis is punching him down as hard as he can. And at this moment, I think in round 6, after Lewis won the 6th round with ease, because at this moment, also round 4 is a 9-9 score because Lewis did better in that round, but he lost a point. All 3 judges, by the way, all agreed to the same scores, that they all got it right. All scores were accurate in this fight. So there was no cheating. By the end of round 6, Tyson's trainer is telling him that he's already tired. Lewis is tiring himself out or something like this. It's been a while since I saw the fight, so I got to go back. It's been a couple weeks since I saw the video, but at this moment, I'm like, dude, do you not know what Tyson's been through right now? He's throwing jabs, more jabs. I think Tyson threw a lot more jabs than power punches. But Lewis, on the other hand, like, he's throwing jabs after jabs. He's throwing more power punches in each round. He's not even tiring himself out because he knows Tyson used up all his energy in the first round. We come to round 7 again. Fans can already tell that Tyson is about to give out. We come to round 8, and this is when the controversy comes, where in 1 of the minute of the round, Lewis tries to punch him down. Tyson, he doesn't, I don't think he buckled his knees or legs. He was trying to duck down to his body, but he was way down low that it almost looked like his butt did touch the ground. But his knees and his feet, he didn't have his gloves or his knees or nothing. Eddie Cotton sees it, but his butt didn't touch the canvas or nothing, but the referee counts it as a knockdown. And then at this moment, I think some people are like, oh, this is upsetting. Why did they count as a knockdown? A minute or so later, Tyson is just throwing jabs as best he can, but his punches are so slow that Lewis can duck it. He throws a right jab or a right heavy punch. Lewis ducks. The end of the fight, the end of the fight ends where Lewis takes out his other glove, he actually angles the glove. He, I don't know if it was his, I think it was his left glove where he puts it to Tyson's face, sets up that power shot. Down goes Tyson. He tries to get up, but the 10 count came to an end. Lewis retains the heavyweight champion belt, and that's it. Oh yeah, and this was also Lewis's first defense in the Ring Magazine belt that hasn't been around since new ownership since 1989 was the last time that belt was fought. So the belt came back here. We're going to talk about the lineal weight belt and the ring belt in another story chapter because I decided to do 7 chapters of this series actually. So yeah, and guys, here's what makes information different. When looking up information, it stated that controversy came. Now, Tyson did say that they were trying to think about having a rematch, but what's the point of having a rematch? Like, hell, like by January of 2002, they already had contracts signed. They were already in press conference in New York at the time with everything else. They already had that direction when there was controversy where Tyson walked towards Lewis's body. When Lewis came on stage and Tyson quickly walked towards him, and then Lewis's bodyguard stepped between them and pushed Tyson back, and Tyson quickly took a fighting stance and threw a roundhouse left on the bodyguard that missed, and raised his fist and threw a punch, a dozen punches of. It was so messed up. Like, the members of both camps swarmed on stage that day in the press conference. Was so crazy with all the pushing and shoving, and they went to the floor, and while they were down there, Tyson, who suffered a cut on his forehead, which was a bit of Lewis at the time, the WBC president, Jose Sullivan, was knocked unconscious in the melee when he hit his head on the table. It stated on August the 1st, 2002, about 2 months after the fight ended, he filed a $56 million lawsuit against Lewis and Tyson. By January the 22nd, 2002, they had a press conference. He hit his head on a table due to the melee. June the 8th, they have the fight. Lewis wins. And then it takes him another 2 months on August the 1st to file a $56 million lawsuit. At this moment, I'm like, dude, this is ridiculous. Oh my gosh. Like, to be honest, guys, it was pretty interesting enough to say the least. Of course, Lewis would take a full year hiatus, take on Klitschko, which we'll get to another story for that some other time. And again, the belts would be vacated, and that's it. Now, guys, have I forgot to mention to you viewers, have you viewers ever heard the story that I told you viewers a while back? I'm sure some of you people might know about the story about the WBO, how Corey Sanders defeated Vladimir Klitschko in 2 straight rounds. Well, after the WBO belt, the WBO was stripped during the time when Corey Sanders won that fight because he went to sign with Don King Promotions, and I don't think Don King cared about the WBO, so they just stripped it to him. Then, by April of 2004, thinking how Chris Bird defeated Vitaly Klitschko, and Vladimir fought for his brother's life and won the belt, Corey Sanders defeats him. So what happens? They set up a fight with Corey Sanders versus Vitaly Klitschko. And Sanders, I will say in this fight, consider this was for the vacant belt, and Klitschko is already trying to recover from his second loss with Lewis at the time last year. So at this moment, it was a pretty decent fight. But like when you look at the first round, when seeing Corey Sanders enter in the fight, like Corey Sanders isn't a young dude. Like he's not in his prime as an African person. Like he's 38 years old, taking on this 32-year-old 6'7" tall dude, and at the time, and he's already trying to recover from his awesome win in his round 2 win against Vitaly's brother last year ago. And I think Vidui also defeated Kurt Johnson last December, 6 months after his loss against Lewis, which was by a knockout win. So he's already trying to bring back his streak. Vidui wins the fight, even though it seemed like Corey Sanders had him in round 1. But then by round 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, he demolished him. It was crazy because, like, the fans, like, when you have the fans booed Lennox Lewis when he entered the Staples Center that same night, when and that Saturday night, which is crazy, after Vidui survived early and with late barrages, like against Corey Sanders when he claimed it, the WBC title that Lewis vacated the month of February. So this was like 2 months after Lewis vacated it, and he vacated it in 2004. So yeah. But yeah, when you look at it from that perspective, like, it was so out of it. Like the bout may not have saved the heavyweight division that night, even when it woke up Klitschko, because when it was ahead of Lewis at the time, 10 months ago, only for the bout to have stopped because of the cuts on Klitschko's eye, yeah, they were aiming big time on champions. Like this was like Vladimir Klitschko losing, and then his brother comes back to defend his honor against defeating Corey Sanders. Because to this very day, not one boxer has defeated both Klitschkos. And it never will happen because they're all past their prime and they retired a long time ago. So, so when looking at that perspective, it was crazy. Like, Klitschko did took some big left hands in the opening round from Sander as a southpaw. And though he was the only round Sanders won, as I said, in round 1 because of it. Also, I think I found a report on New York Times by Michael Katz. Michael Katz on New York Times on April the 25th, a day after the fight, he actually wrote this down and saying, in the 8th, he shocked Klitschko by landing a couple of right hooks. And though tiring and bleeding from the nose, Sanders gave it one more try and pressed Klitschko and seemed to be turning the bout around when he took a sudden straight right and was hurt. Klitschko did not let the chance escape. I was surprised he never went down, said Klitschko, 34-2 and 33 knockouts. He took so many punches, it was unbelievable. Klitschko was not interested in fighting any of the 3 other champions. Lamont Brewster, who 2 weeks ago knocked out Vladimir Klitschko, and I have talked about that fight for the WBO. I've talked about that. And the Chris Bird and John Ruiz, which were champions at the time, who retained their own champions. Hope Lennox Lewis decides to come back and fight me in the same arena and in the ring as we did a year ago, from the Soviet Air Force officer of the PhD Sports Science in University in Kyiv, which is a weird thing. Yeah. But of course, Lewis never came back. He retired for good. He never fought again for this fight. And Lewis, who weighed almost, it stated that Michael Katz stated that he almost weighed 300 pounds, Lennox Lewis. He had no such plans. Yeah, Lewis had nothing to say. Like I said, Sanders was taken to a hospital for a hematoma of his left ear, and everything else, like, he was, even though his manager Vernon Smith did say that he was crackling jokes at the time, but still, yeah, all the other information is what it is. But yeah, I think it was obvious. Yeah, it was. There was some interesting things here, but I think when looking at that, like, Corey Sanders was an underdog story, and to be honest, rest in peace. By December 11th, 2004, Vidui retained his title. He actually got onto the Ring Magazine title with Danny Williams when Danny Williams defeated Mike Tyson several months ago and made him the ranked fighter. And but we're going to talk about that fight in another chapter. Vitaly retires due to injuries with the bout taking place on March 18th, 2006, where Hasim Rahman fights back against James Toney for the vacant WBC belt. I have nothing to say about this fight, guys. The only information I'm going to say about this fight is that 2 judges scored it 114 to 114. One scored it 117 to 111 of Rahman. And even though Rahman retains the title with a draw by winning the final round, interesting. And it did stated that with all judges stating that it is interesting because the 12-round fight, I haven't seen the fight, and I'm not thinking about planning on watching it because I feel bad that James Toney never became heavyweight champion, so I'm not planning on watching the fight. But information does state here that Tom and Nobuaki, 2 judges that scored it 114 even, stated that they had Toney leading by 1 point heading into the 12th round. And there were no knockouts, but Rahman did suffer a deep cut over a left eye in the fifth that worsened as the fight continued. Kalpubak's record showed 279 out of 933 punches landed by Rahman. A lot of power, but mostly that's the total punch. While Toney had 263 out of 633 punches landed in his run. So, yeah. Fun fact, it's stated that Rahman was only 42 punches away from Ikabuchi's 975 thrown punch individual record at the time. That's going to be a story I'll talk about some other time. But yeah, to be honest, Rahman never won the title. Interesting. But they just gave it to him. I don't know if that was the case or something. I got to look up the story because they did say that Rahman retained the title, but yet again, I don't know because he never won it outside of the ring. This might be the same thing as Ken Norton in 78. Anyway, guys, by 2006, this is the moment when it all goes downhill. Like I said, 2006 was the year that American boxing was down the drain. Now, Oleg Maskaev, a sort of quote-unquote Kazakhstan guy born in Kazakhstan, but mostly, he was mostly born in Kazakhstan to Russian parents. He lived in the U.S. since 1999, and he acquired U.S. citizenship in 2004, and he became boxer. But by 1993, he was already a full-time boxer. His career was down the drain. He lost against fighter like Oliver McCall in 96 during his first couple years in pro. By first-round knockout, he lost against David Tua in 97. His record was dumb. He lost against Ken Johnson, Lance Whittaker, Corey Sanders in 2002. His career was already down the drain until he defeated Hasim Rahman. And guys, when you watch that 12-round fight, it was pretty dang good. Rahman and Maskaev or Oleg both even each other from 11 rounds of competition. And after 11 rounds of competition, Jerry Roth had 106 to 103 for Oleg, 104 to 105 by Glenn giving it to Oleg. A guy named Anik had it 106 to 103 for Rahman. Until the final minute of the fight, Oleg finishes Rahman in the 12th and final round, becomes Russian champion. This guy suffered so much in his career with 5 losses, thinking that he just never had a chance, and he did. And then come 2006 in December, he takes on the nobody named Akelo Peter, wins. And then another Peter comes in Plaza de Toros, Mexico. Samuel Peter demolishes this dude by round 6 TKO win. When you watch this fight, it was just so crazy. You just have, when you watch the first couple rounds, it was pretty dangerous. You just have these guys just throwing every single punch they can throw at each other. They land at each other, but yet again, Peter's doing the bigger punches. He's hurting every single bit of him. I think in round 3, I remember in round 3 is when when Peter wobbled the Russian and battered him, and I think around round 4 he managed to hurt him by more punching jabs again and more heavy damn hits. He rocked him again with a right early in the 5th round, which I'm surprised the fight didn't end. Come round 6, he right-handed connected him upstairs, and during huge flurries of punches, and he fell back towards the ropes, the Russian guy did. The referee stopped the fight with a few seconds left at the end of the round and badly hurt. At least 30 million people in Nigeria watched the fight. Yeah. Considering that Nigeria and Mexico at the time where they were taking it did say it was like a 10-hour difference, maybe a 5-hour difference at the time when it was recorded, but 30 million people in Nigeria watched this fight. That's pretty amazed for what they did. Like, this estimated the population of Nigeria around the time that stated that there were 150 million people at the time, and 30 million of them watched this fight. Like 5 to 10 hours difference from time zone, from Mexico to Nigeria, because you guys got to understand that they're far away from different parts. So you have people watching this when it's time to go to bed. Like, that's pretty crazy. Like, overall, the fight was watched over 400 million people around the world in 180 countries, with the most viewers from Africa. Like, this was ridiculous. Also, by the way, the WBC heavyweight title, this was the 94th time the WBC was on the line. So keep that in mind. Samuel Peters wins the fight, and as for Oleg, he would fight one more year or so, a couple fights, lose against a random dude in 2009, gets a nobody, takes on Owen Beck when he comes back in 2012, a former contender who's past his prime, defeats Jason Gavern, a jobber journeyman, defeats journeyman Danny Williams in 2013, and his 20-year boxing career from 93 to 2013 was over. So, can't say much about his career, but it is what it is. Now, Samuel Peter, we have already talked about him in his fight with Vladimir Klitschko. We already had this or that. Well, suddenly, several months later, thinking that his loss against Vladimir Klitschko couldn't get any worse, October the 11th, 2008, Vitaly Klitschko comes back from a 4-year hiatus. He doesn't come back fighting a couple nobodies like Mike Tyson did in 95 with Peter McNeely and, of course, Buster Mathis Jr., and then he fought against Frank Bruno in the Selden fight in 96 for titles. But no, Vitaly just came back and just fought the fight while he was even ranked in the WBC, and he won. He dominated Samuel Peter so hard that by the end of round 8, he couldn't continue. They had to stop the fight, and they just couldn't let him continue in round 9. It was so crazy. And at the time, they were already proceeding on a light heavyweight fight for the IBF at the time with Antonio Tarver and Chad Dawson, because this was televised in Showtime due to a tape delay proceeding in Showtime's airing with that fight around the time. 9.67 million people at the time in Germany watched this fight. Dude, the heavyweight division back then with other countries, people really cared. Like, guys, in America, we might have maybe 100 million people, maybe millions. Only God knows how many American people or people that are in America right now are here today. But a lot of people, only barely millions of people, care about watching this stuff. Even if it's American versus American. And it's just crazy. Vitaly wins the belt. Then, and of course, Samuel Peter does lose against a guy named Eddie Chambers sometimes later, and loses against Klitschko in 2010 with other guys like Robert Helenius, Kubrat Poev, and Huggy Fury and Arslanbek Makhmudov. In his last decade, he would lose against those fighters. But Vitaly Klitschko, I just really don't know what to say. By March of 2009, he defeats Juan Carlos Gomez, and there wasn't much about Gomez other than being a Cuban raised in Germany. He already suffered losses in his career. He was already WBC International Cruiserweight Champion in the 90s at his time. He had a great undefeated record at his time as a WBC World Cruiserweight Champion. But then he decided to go up to heavyweight in 2002, lose against a random dude, nobody named Yaku Diaz for some reason. And that guy got him in round 1, first loss for Carlos. So now people are thinking, well, his career's dead. He does defeat other guys that are in his prime in 2007, which gets him finally into the rankings in the heavyweight. He wins the WBC heavyweight title eliminator in September 2008, but he doesn't get far. He loses against Vitaly Klitschko. And for the last years of his career, he loses against Darnell Wilson in 2011 by majority decision in 10 rounds. He continues fighting until 2014. He loses against another nobody dude that's somewhat of a hype job guy by first round KO, and that was the end of his 19-year career. There's nothing much I can say about that fight. Went 9 rounds. And then in 2009, at this moment, by September and December, he defeats guys like Chris Arreola, Kevin Johnson, before he became a now jobber guy as of right now. But if you ignore that 12-round fight with him and Kevin Johnson, which went nowheres, Chris Arreola never had stood a chance as a heavyweight contender. Like, yeah, his first 6 years in pro were started out as different. He wins out, fights against nobodies, and then suddenly he finally gets up his game plan in 2006 to 2007, starts winning interesting fights that were somewhat contenders. Like contenders like Thomas Hayes, Malcolm Tang, Damian Willis. Fighters that didn't have horrible records, mind you. Chaz Witherspoon, Israel Carlos Garcia, Travis Walker, Jamil McCline. And then he steps in with this dude, Vitaly, and he rocked him. Like, after 10 rounds, Vitaly rocked this Mexican in 10 rounds. He couldn't answer the bell to the 11th round because he just couldn't handle it. Also, the Associated Press of the Klitschko retains heavyweight bout on September 27, 2009, one day after this fight in the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Associated Press did say something on the line here saying this about, and one interesting article says here that it was the 3rd win for Klitschko since he returned last year from his 4-year retirement. He needed to allow his body to heal. His brother Vladimir, who a heavyweight champion, was in the corner to give him advice, but there was a little that needed to be said about his performances. So dominating that it seemed little chance for Arreola, even after the first round. I'm so sorry, I really wanted to be champion, Arreola said. I never wanted to quit. Ringside punch statistics showed Klitschko threw 802 punches, a huge amount, and landed 301. Arreola threw 331 and landed 86. Klitschko was a 5-1 favorite, and to be honest, guys, and even the crowd started to grow fainter. Like, the cheers grew fainter, though, at the time of the round when it was added to the crowd, when the crowd realized that this was not going to be their man's night. Because most, like I said before, we're in the U.S. and the fans are cheering for Arreola to win at this point. He's going for wins. The pace of the fight was set in the first round, and Klitschko just was moving backwards. With Klitschko moving backwards slowly, landing punches in the head, while Arreola lunged at him at one point, finding only air, which he was just punching air. He was throwing punches, but he just couldn't land a lot. You never thought to yourself how this fight went 10 rounds. And believe me, guys, I wish I could talk more about this fight, but there's more about Arreola than it is. So Vitaly Klitschko, again, he comes by, but by 2010, he takes on a random dude, 45, 2-0 guy named Albert Sosnowski from Poland, which I wish he would have won the title, but His career went nowhere. He was done. He went 10 rounds, got a huge KO victory. Like, Klitschko got a huge KO victory on that. There was nothing interesting about that fight. It was just a tune-up fight for him against Shannon Briggs in October. And guys, I don't want to talk about this fight. The fight was a 12-round mess. All judges' scorecards. Two of them had 120 to 107, 120 to 105 for one. Shannon Briggs, like, what else can you say about him? This guy, after his victories and his painful loss in 2007 against Sultan Ibragimov, comes back in 2009, scores a win, but originally he had illegal substances, so it was a no contest. Wins a couple of knockouts. It wins 3 straight first-round knockouts against fighters that were nobodies in 2010, only to fight and lose dominatingly. It was sad to see Shannon Briggs and seeing his body and the aftermath. Guys, I don't want to talk about that fight. And guys, I'm just going to skip Vitaly Klitschko's title defense. Like, guys, I'll be honest, guys. This has to be one of the top 5 greatest heavyweight comebacks in boxing history for a guy winning fights. 2011, he already defeated a guy named Audelier Solis by first-round KO, and that guy's career died because of that. Because by 2012 and 2013, when he won a few other fights against some contenders, his loss against Tony Thompson and the rematch they had a year later in 2015 was dead for. But there was nothing left. The Cuban fighter, another Cuban boxer, had a chance, and that was it. Like, man, we had a lot of Cuban boxers. And guys, when you watch that fight, like, watching it, it's only round 1. And guys, I'm going to talk about it. Like, the fight goes as this. They both plan on each other to just struggle so much. Like, Dan Rafael, the reporter at the time, stated the fight began nicely enough with Klitschko. And guys, I did wrote information down about this, but I decided to read Dan Rafael's opinion because the way he wrote it is a lot more straightforward than me, because I'm not a straight person typing in information like this. So this is what he stated. He reported that the fight began nicely enough with Klitschko using his jabs and size advantage, while Solis, with his quick hands, landed a sneaky right hand that got Klitschko's attention. But just in the competitive first round, who coming to a close, Klitschko landed a decent right hand to the head. Solis did not appear hurt from the punch, but he stepped back and lost his footing. He went down, and it was quickly clear that Solis was in terrible, but not because of his head. He had a problem with his right knee and was unsteady as he struggled to get onto his feet, pulling himself and grabbing the ropes. Solis struggled to move on the bad knee. The referee called off the fight by KO, and yeah, it was coming to the closing round. It ended at 2 minutes and 59 seconds. 10.98 million views just saw a fight that ended bad. The scan revealed that Solis did have tears of an anterior cruciate ligament and an external meniscus, as well as a cartilage damage on his right knee, which is also why his career came to an end because of it. It was bad. His last fights, on the other hand, guys, by September, he dominates 10 rounds against Tomasz Adamek, 44-1, good Polish fighter, a guy that had some great success in the cruiserweight, being former IBF champion. Like, guys, how many Polish boxers have become cruiserweight champion, but they never had the chance to win a heavyweight champion? It's ridiculous. 2002, 12 came to an end. Derek Chisora, he took on Derek Chisora, but Derek Chisora already suffered 2 losses after Tyson Fury some years ago, and he also suffered another loss against Robert Helenius, and then comes 2 months later, he loses another 12-round decision against Klitschko. Well, at least those 3 losses he suffered in those from July the 23rd, 2011 with Fury fight, and then February the 18th. and his fight 2 months after with Robert Helenius. At least those 12 rounds were with it. Like, those are close rounds, so you can't say that Derek Chisora was still a contender even when he lost those 3 fights. So you gotta give him credit. But 21-0 Mahmoud Achar. Guys, I have a lot of funny information to talk about Manuel Achar in the WBA story. All I can say, guys, this fight was uneventful. Like, this fight is one of my favorites to talk about because you come to round 1, Klitschko is just dominating jabs. He's using his size. He's using his advantage. In round 2, he knocks out, he puts Char down. Char, at the moment, after even in round 3, Char is already suffering a huge cut on his right eyebrow. By round 4, just Vidui finishes him off. And by 2 minutes in the 4th round, referee calls a fight, and that's it. Like, there's nothing much I can say about 21-0 undefeated Manuel Achar. So yeah, by 2008 to 2012, Vidui had a successful of 9 title defenses, but would retire for good after this fight because some people said he had an injury. He vacated the belt a long time by 2013. And around that time, we had Bermane Stiverne and Chris Arreola fighting for the WBC, like, international belt, like a silverweight belt, which Bermane Stiverne would win in April. Of course, Arreola had a first-round KO at the time for the WBC International Heavyweight title, and it took them a full 12, 13 months after their first meeting in the USC Gallon Center. Bermane Stiverne and Chris Arreola would study each other on May the 10th on Don King Promotions, and both of them would come out each other as crazy. So Bermane got through the first fight easily in 12 rounds. It was an easy win for him. But Chris Arreola, my God, when I saw this fight, he came in guns blazing. Now, Arreola is already recovering from his other 2 losses after his loss against Vidui Klitschko. He lost against Thomas Adamick in April of 2010. He won a fight against a guy named Brian Minto in the middle part after and before his Klitschko and Adamick losses. And then he takes on guys like Joey Abel, and he had a 10-round decision that was bouted as a no contest. He defeats Eric Molina by first-round KO in 2012, and then he took a full year hiatus, as said about, and then that year hiatus became him and Bermane Stiverne fought a fight, and that's it. This fight was on its core. This was a pretty entertaining fight for what it was, and even though Arreola was entered as a slight 1.15 to 1 betting underdog, he was in this fight pretty good. This was a great publication because Vladimir Klitschko was recognized as heavyweight champion at the time of the fight. Also, by 2011, guys, by 2011 and 2012, both the Klitschko brothers held the titles, and people wanted to see a great brother versus brother action. But promising they would never get to fight each other is interesting. It also stated that December 2013 is when Vidui stepped in away from boxing, and this was the reason why this fight was vacated because of that. It took him a full year to vacate that belt after his win against Manuel Achar. Crazy. So the competition goes as this, where both guys steady each other, and to be honest, it wasn't a boring fight for all mankind. Well, in hindsight, both guys studied each other. They were evening up fights here and there. Like, when you have Bermane Stiverne, it was pretty decent. But then you come to round 2, round 3, and round 4. Like, Arreola was putting Bermane Stiverne to town. Like, he was putting him to work like no other man did. Like, he was on fire. Like Chris Arreola was such a different boxer than he did in the first fight. Excuse me. Like, you just don't know how good he was. He went into this fight and he finished him with ease into it, is what I thought. By round 5, Bermane Stiverne already had his comeuppance. By the way, there was one point in the fight, I forgot which round it was, where Areola attacked him, pushed Berman to the ropes and hit him, and then they hit each other. And then suddenly they both stop punching, and Stavern points his left glove to the referee like he's rambling to Areola about something, and then the referee steps in to bell ring. Like, I don't know, like the bell already rung, but still, I don't know what Stavern was like. I think the bell rung or something. I don't know, but yeah, like Areola was throwing these crazy punches. Like, guys, when you see the instant replays of those heavy punches that Areola has given to Stavern, like, it goes to show you that Stavern had no chance of being in the boxing. There was one point where he hit Stavern and he slipped out of the ropes, but it was a slip. But most importantly, he managed to recover. But like Stavern, like Areola really wanted to win this heavyweight title. Even as the first Mexican boxer to win a heavyweight champion, like, guys, the 2000s were a year where other countries are trying to become the first. Even though Areola was from the U.S., but mostly born as he was born in the U.S., but mostly he was a Mexican. Like, Berman Stavern was born in Haiti. He raised in Canada, the same way as how Trevor Berbick and Lennox Lewis had their time when they became amateur boxers in their career. They started in Canada, and they became champions even in their own countries when they were born. But still, it's the same. So the fight comes to an end in the 6th round, where out of nowhere, like, Stavern got, like, the 5th round was pretty even for Stavern. He got that round won. At this moment, scorecards were even. The fight comes to an end when Areola is pushing him back to the ropes, and Stavern throws his left punch combination and gets back to the rope. He throws again and throws this wild upstairs right, and Areola hesitates for a half second, and he stumbles in a chicken dance. He does a chicken dance and hits the ground. And like, the replay of that punch gets him right down to the equilibrium where Andy Ruiz ended Anthony Joshua's undefeated career in that 3rd round in Madison Square Garden. He threw the same exact punch. Down goes Areola, and he tries to get back up. He does, but Berman finishes off, pushes him out to the ropes, and surprisingly, down goes again. But he gives him another chance, and for a 3rd time, Berman punches more, and there was one point that the referee was going to step in. He was behind Berman, and he grabs Berman's left arm to stop him, but Berman was about to continue punching again, and Areola punches back, and the referee pushes him even when he threw his left punch to stop the fight, and that was it. Berman Stavern, first champion in Canada to become the 4th Canadian boxer to become heavyweight champion, first in his country of Haiti. So, yeah, Berman Stavern, I don't think he has what it takes to be a great champion. By the way, guys, during the interview when he was down in the ring, there was actually arguments with Don King and another promoter, some other guy at the time, where they both argued, and someone pushed Don King, and he was about to fall out of the ring. Like, someone was about to push an 80-year-old Don King. Like, dude. Like, that, there's actually videos on YouTube, you viewers can find that, where Don King was arguing at the night during that moment. Oh, yeah, and Berman Stavern's first professional defeat took place in July the 7th, 2007, against a journeyman. So that was his first loss. So, yeah, pretty much. This was the start of boxing here. Then we come to January the 17th, 2015. The first American, Deontay Wilder, the first American in 8 years after Shannon Briggs was the last. Will we have a first American to win a champion? This fight was crazy. I don't have a lot of information to say about this fight because it all went 12 rounds. Information-wise, the fight was sloppy. Wilder was throwing wild punches at the time, and Stavern wasn't even defending it. Like, he was throwing punches, but Wilder was dominating fights. He was throwing punches here or there. There was one time he threw a Wilder punch and just completely missed or something. I forgot what round it was. In round 8, it stated in round 8, before the end of the round. They both fell down onto the ropes, and the bell rung. In my mind, the score was a 10-9 round, but rumors stated that all three judges gave it a 10-8 in round 7, even though there was no knockdown or something. So yeah, there was a lot of sloppiness. I think you can already tell. Like like at this moment, the 12 rounds was such an uneventful moment, and even though this was the first time and only time that Deontay Wilder has ever won a fight by going the distance. Also, there was one time where I think in one of the rounds, mostly I can't remember what round it was, but yet again, I think it was round 2 when they also fell as well. But because they also fell in round 2, but I think the big moment came a while when both fighters just like. Wilder hurt Stavern so much, I was like, how did Stavern win 12 rounds of decision? It was crazy, to say the least, but when looking at it, like I said before, guys, there was no knockdown in the fight, even though judges had it in rounds. Like I said before, guys, in round 7, Stavern threw a combination. He was throwing wild punches of his own, and he fell back to the ropes. There was a slip, so for some weird reason... And it was funny because that moment was funny because Wilder just backed away from his punches and he decided not to throw his own punch. He just let Berman just fell to the ropes. And then he would throw this huge wild combinations of wild punches on each other. But yeah, the fight was somewhat uneventful. It was an easy fight. Wilder won and that's it. By 2015, Wilder would fight 2 fights against Eric Molina and Jonathan Dupas, which the viewer numbers on YouTube, considering how many viewers they had millions of viewers watching. Mostly the fight was too wild. The fights were just out of control at the time. Eric had no chance of staying alive in the fight, and he had it ended round 9. Early in the fight, during the time... early in the fight, around the time with Jonathan Dupas and Wilder, the referee did went to the corner after a 1-minute break when he told him that if he doesn't show him signs of fighting, that he's going to stop the fight, which is interesting because the referee told him that if he doesn't show him that he's tough, he's going to stop the fight. It took them over several rounds for him to say that he's going to stop the fight. Ridiculous. I just don't get it. And at this moment, guys, they were already thinking about setting up for a fight against him and Vladimir Klitschko because he was still champion at the time. But 2 months after Jonathan Dupas fight, or the Johan Dupas fight, my bad, Fury would win, strip out the IBF. And then come January the 16th, Wilder would take on Artur Szpilka, another Polish fighter, in the heavyweight. Guys, there's so many of these boxers in countries like Cuba and Poland. No wonder. It just sucks to see these boxers just not go for a win. Artur is trying to recover from him getting knocked out in the 10th and final round in Madison Square Garden in January of 2014 against Brian Jennings. He defeats Thomas Adamick when he was already past his prime and he was done for. Took on a couple 3 nobody fights in 2015 just to take on Wilder. This fight, guys, I'll be honest, guys. People say that Artur Szpilka had no chance of winning this fight against Wilder. But, guys, in fairness, I 100% believe Artur Szpilka would have won this fight easily. You come to the first round, they throw combinations at each other. And there was one point where Szpilka threw the wild punch and Wilder backed away, almost stumbled. And like every time, there was times that every time Szpilka tries to go forward, he goes back, Wilder punches, he swings, like Szpilka goes by, punches downstairs, Wilder misses, doom, and then he goes forward again, backs, Wilder misses another wild punch. Like at this moment, like this is a moment, like, Spilka was dancing around him. By the way, this was during a time when they were doing press conferences and such, that these two were really not friends of each other. And at this moment, guys, there was moments where every time Spilka puts his arms up on his head, and then he attacks. Like, he was doing that same move. And I didn't understand what Wilder meant every time he talks about this fight, when he says that he was doing that same move over again from the first to the 9th round. But now I understand what he was talking about. Like, he was doing that same type move, going forward, heads, put his gloves up, puts his gloves down, punches. And at that moment, if it was true, I would feel like if Anthony Joshua or Fury was fighting against Spilka, they would have ended this fight a lot sooner than round 9. Wilder comes in, he just closes him so much. At one point in one of the rounds, I could think round 3 or so, like, is when they had blood or something on one of their eyes or something. I don't know. It's been a while since I watched a fight, but still, mostly these two were so angry at each other. And when Wilder was throwing punches, he was hurt. To be honest, I can't tell. I just can't tell. Just give me a break, guys. So, guys, the final title defenses for Wilder came as this. Like, guys, I can ignore the Tyson, Fury, and Wilder trilogy fight. Like, the first fight, yes, it was Tyson going to school, and people got arguments of Tyson cheating because people say that he took half of his glove out of his hand, and every time you see punches thrown, you can see his glove flopping around for some reason, and every time it doesn't hit Wilder, but part of his hand that was barely inside of his glove would hit Wilder, and people thought he cheated. He bled Wilder in that fight. Wilder clipped his ear in round 9 that brought him down for the first time in that fight. Got that huge left punch that finished Fury in the 12th round, ended by split decision draw. I had it 114 to 112 for Fury in that fight. And it was weird how Fury got back up on that fight during that round. Yeah. And then in 2019, he defeats Dominic Breazeale by first round KO. Awesome win. He knocks him Luis Ortiz in November 23rd, which was another great knockout win in round 7. He gets 10 title defenses. By the way, guys, played 2016 to 2019. Wilder was given so many awards. He was getting Ring Magazine of the Year awards and Premier Boxing, the PBC Premier Boxing Awards at the time, when the PBC Premier Boxing Champions was actually a thing back around the time. He was getting, like, 2016 PBC Knockout of the Year award with Arthur Spilka. Bermans Vern 2017. 2018, a Fight of the Year with Premier Boxing with him and Ortiz. Round of the Year in 2018 with him and Fury in round 12. 2019 Premier Boxing Knockout of the Year with Breazeale. Ring Magazine Knockout of the Year made it him and the Luis Ortiz fight in 2019. He was also Fighter of the Year in 2019. Like, dude, guys, Wilder was the hot commodity at the time. And by November, by the month of December, he was rated #1 in BoxRec, which he hasn't done that since for the last few years until Anthony Joshua surpassed him. Guys, they were also trying to go for that boxing fight they were trying to fight in 2018 and 2019. They were trying to advertise for that fight for the Undisputed at the time. Eddie Hearn didn't know what the heck to do. And even with trying to promote Anthony Joshua in America was a failure. And of course, Anthony Joshua would be #1 ranked a month later when he defeated Andy Ruiz in their second rematch in Saudi Arabia. Guys, I'm going to ignore the 2 other fights with him and Fury. The only information we can say is in the second fight, we report that Fury might have taken plaster out of his gloves or a padding out of his gloves. So Wilder assumed that he put an egg weight shaped form in his glove that might have broke part of Deontay's skull or something. He got him in round 3 and body punched him in round 5. He got deducted a point in round 5. Mark Bruin stopped the fight. Vitale got fired that same day with Wilder when he was upset that he stopped the fight, but the referee would have stopped the fight either way. Also, Wilder came in the ring wearing a 40-pound costume weeks before the fight. Deontay's trainers thought it was a good idea that he should gain a few more pounds in the fight, which made him overweight at the time. Not a good idea. So, and then we come by. Fury was gonna take on Ajit Caballel, but Wilder stepped away and just said, "Nope, I want a third match." Come May, they're going to fight in May of 2021. Takes them 5 months later in October. Fury knocks him down in round 3. Come round 4, he knocks out Wilder twice in the 4th round. That other last knockdown he did in round 4, the referee counted so slow that Fury got back up on the count of 11, maybe 12. I felt like Fury got back up on the count of 12 when the referee counted 8, and then Fury got back up. Dude, 2 fights, and there would have been times that Wilder should have defeated Fury. Come round 11, Fury gets him, and that's it. Dude, he also knocked him out in round 10 as well. But, dude, Wilder, no wonder Wilder's career came to a bloody end. Wilder had nothing left in him during this whole crap trilogy fight with him and Fury. This was a waste of time. I feel bad because I feel like Wilder was the victim of so much of this crap that there would have been times that he would have won the fight and that was it. Fury gets away with murder whether it's true or not. It was such a ridiculous time that I just don't know what to say. You come to 2022 and Tyson gets his mandatory fighter with Dillian Whyte, and here's some information I will talk about the fight. This was also the inaugural for the WBC Union belt. And yes, guys, remember an hour ago when I talked about how the WBC had commemorative belts? Well, they would commemorate another belt for this time for Fury at the time, which is hilarious. Sheesh. Dude, this is ridiculous. At the time, guys, you just don't know how ridiculous it is. But, yeah. There was just so much problems at the time. And not only that, guys, the WBC Bridgerweight title was already coming into the line in 2020. And that was also suffering a problem because Wilder had to be at over 225 pounds if he wanted to stay in the heavyweight division because the Bridgerweight is 200.5 and a quarter to 225 pounds at that weight class. Dude, no wonder Deontay Wilder's career was dead. His career was dead even when his second fight with Fury. And there were times that he should have won fight 1 or fight 3, and Fury got away with it. And like I said, Dillian Whyte, on the other hand, was no consumption because, well, yeah, like in that fight, guys, it was a pretty good fight for the most part of it because you have Fury and Whyte punching great jabs at each other and early in the fights. There was time when anyone else would have thought that Dillian did good in the first couple rounds, but there wasn't a lot to it. He was handling himself in that fight until he changed his boxing stance. And when he changed his stance early in the fights in the next rounds, Fury just found that uppercuts and everything else. He also broke Dillian Whyte's eye in the 4th round in the fight. Come 2 rounds later, he throws this great right uppercut by Fury, uppercuts Dillian, uppercuts, pushes him down. He's down, he gets back up, but the referee ends the fight. And then come December, he takes on Derek Chisora for a 3rd time, another trilogy crapshoot fight. Chisora doesn't win. He loses by round 10 TKO. Fury wins, takes on Francis Ngannou, non-title. Why? And then he loses against Alexander Usyk in May 18th. Wow, dude, Fury did not get over in the second reigns. This was a waste of stupidity for Fury to have to hold on to this title for 4 straight years. Was it worth it? Guys, Wilder held on to his title for 5 years. And even though he defended it 10 times, 6 of those title defenses I can't say were good. His other 4 title defenses with both Ortiz and his Brazil and Fury fight, dude, no one got over in this title. Vitaly Klitschko's 9 title defenses and his great comeback in 2008 to 2012 in fights has to be the most greatest moment he ever got over. Like Samuel Peters' win and such, yeah, he might have gotten over. Oleg Maskev, well, it was a great underdog story for him, so he deserved it. From Kazakhstan, great championship win for them, even though he was born in Kazakhstan but raised as Russian parents. Lennox Lewis's final years in boxing were taken on past prime fighters and a next top contender that got unlucky due to his injuries. Like, yeah. Somehow I do find it crazy. Because, guys, the only time, like, guys, we've had only, guys, by 1999 to 2024, we had Lewis, Rotman, Klitschko, Vitaly, not Vladimir, just Vitaly, Oleg, Samuel Peter, Klitschko again, but nothing much, and yes, Lewis won again, Stavern, Wilder, and Fury, and now Alexander Usyk. 9 people held on to this title from November of 1999 to May 2024. And my answer to you viewers is, who got over the most? And if I had to guess, it would have to be Vitaly Klitschko. He got over as a 3-time world heavyweight champion. He, in my mind, got more success and recognition in his time during boxing. He did. And I do believe that for all boxers out there, there wasn't a lot to say about any of the fights. Like, guys, there were some moments I could talk about the fights in the 2000s, but by the end of 2012 and everything else, and after Berman Stavern's win against Arreola, I just didn't know what information to talk about in the last decade. I think at the end of the day, guys, there was a lot of problems in boxing at this moment, but yeah, it was a tough sell for me to understand, and I just can't wait to talk about the IBO, because, guys, next time in part 4, the IBO is going to be a lot of a different story. And even though the IBO is not a major belt, but it has been around for a full quarter of a century, I'm surprised that it was involved with this whole entire Undisputed. Like, guys, anytime now, the IBO can be a major right now, and you can call Alexander Usyk the first male to ever become undisputed in a 5-belt era, even though we're still counting this as a 4-belt era. At the end of the day, I just don't know what else to say. Like, say whatever you want to, but I can't wait to talk about any of the other information, because, guys, this information is going to be crazy. And that's what I'm going to say. So there we go, guys. That's the end of part 3 for the road to the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship, the WBC story. So next time will be part 4, the IBO. I'm going to do part 5 as the WBA Super Duper Heavyweight Champion, Rummy's Corner likes to call it. And then part 6, I'm going to do the WBA Regular Heavyweight Champion. So I'm going to put both of those WBAs in separate stories. And then part 7, the final chapter, will be the Lineal Weight Champion and probably the Ring Magazine if I will put it in. I'll just talk about both of them in those later years, guys. The road to the Undisputed Heavyweight Champion is underway for next time. So thank you, viewers, for watching this video. And with that being said, FoxWolf out.